Hello, my name is Monique Carmela. I am a trauma-informed feminine empowerment, self-love, and relationships coach. I created the Good Girl Unleashed podcast as a way to support you on your journey to liberating yourself from limiting beliefs, trauma, suppression, so that we can all come home and live authentically and unapologetically. I support my clients and my community with resolving trauma, releasing suppressed emotions in a safe, supportive way that allows them to reconnect to their authentic self and create a deeply fulfilling life and rich, nourishing relationships. I am so grateful that you're here. Let's dive into today's episode. Welcome. Welcome to the Good Girl Unleashed podcast. Today I'm here with Amberly Rose, and we're here for a really exciting conversation today. And there's something really potent that we've been sitting on this for a little while, and it was something I actually wanted to lead last month, but when I really tuned into it, it didn't actually feel like that divine timing. And I really felt like I needed more space to really sit with what wanted to come through, because I could feel the potency of it. I could feel like the depth of it, and it wasn't something that I wanted to rush into as much as I was really excited, which is really funny because just before pressing record, Emily and I were in like a process of connecting to what we're going to share with you, and I actually can feel. So the theme of this conversation is girl to woman, just so I can kind of provide a bit of context. When I was in my girl, there was like this really excitable energy and like, I want to do it now. And like, really like, let's go. Like, rather than actually taking the time to drop into my woman and really connect to that clarity, that grounded, that embodied wisdom of where do I want to lead this conversation today. But it was also in alignment with like when I wanted to lead what we're going to be leading later this month, which is a really, I don't want to announce it yet. Like I want to build the build up because it's just so exciting. But it's like what I was feeling last month to lead it last month was coming from that girl, excitable energy. Like I want to do it now, but like knowing from my woman that it wasn't quite the right time. And in honoring that was really coming from the woman in me. And that embodied wisdom of like, actually, next month is going to be the more aligned, potent time to do this. So what Amberly and I are going to be sharing later this month is actually a 5-day experience, and it's called Becoming. The theme of it is girl to woman. So it's like the becoming of this woman that is all within us. And it's like what I feel when I feel it, it's like this embodied, empowered essence, like this energy, but it's so deep. And it's like, I can't even find the words to describe the magic of this, the potency of this, the transformation that we've already been exploring, like in our call over the weekend when we were really workshopping where are we leading this container and this journey. And I could feel the shifts happening inside of me and inside of you. Like it was such an embodied workshopping experience. And I felt such a deep clarity of where I want to lead this space. So we're going to delve more into this in this conversation today, in this episode, around like, what does it look like? How does the girl show up in our lives, and how does the woman show up? And how do we start tapping into the woman within, like that embodied wisdom, and start leading our lives really consciously and intentionally? And then if this resonates, if you're feeling like you're really called to join us, I really want to invite you to actually tune in. And does it feel like this journey is going to really support me on my particular unique journey? And if it does, we would love to welcome you into the Becoming Masterclass. So it's a 5-day experience. We're going to go quite deep with this journey. And that's going to be June 18th to the 24th. So I'll pop a link below for you to get registered, but I would really highly recommend, first and foremost, listening to this conversation, really feeling into, is that 5-day experience going to be really supportive and beneficial for you? Do you feel called to join us? So welcome, Amberly. I'm going to hand over to you and just see what would you like to bring into the space, and where could we lead from here?
Thank you. Well, Actually, the first place that I feel like anchoring into, or maybe just giving a little bit more spaciousness around, is the type of woman that you're really inviting into the masterclass. And the words that keep coming up are willing and ready. And and in this willing and ready is this willingness to really take responsibility for the moments in our lives where we're acting from our, I guess, immature child that hasn't been parented into maturity, and actually taking real ownership for those times that that happens and really calling them into growing up and growing into our mature feminine, growing into the woman that that maybe sometimes we put a mask on or stand in a certain posture around, but we don't actually feel fully grounded, anchored, or rooted in that whatsoever. There's almost, I guess, if I close my eyes and feel into my body, which is what we were just doing before this call, was feeling into these two energies where one felt really, really anchored into the chest and the head, and I guess the sensations were some fluttering, anxiousness or excitement, and sort of caught up in all of the excitement and toing and froing in the mental realms. And then the other felt like it pulled me straight down into my womb, and I instantly felt more rooted in my direction. I felt a softening and an opening and a slowing down, and I felt an ability to move in a direction with some discernment, with a more, a deeper connection to my body, a deeper connection to my desires, and a lot more, certainty and confidence, which, interestingly, I don't use the word confidence a lot. Certainty and clarity I do, but yeah, there was a real confidence to feeling of moving from my lower centers. And not only that, there was, as you described as well, there was an opening to holding more of the excitable energy and being able to direct that more clearly, because I feel like in this girl to woman journey, there's a unwinding of where we're acting from immature patterns, but there's also a reclaiming of the gifts of our inner child, which maybe we haven't spoken so directly to because we've been really focused on reclaiming the gifts of womanhood. But it's like when we come down and we move from the womb, there's actually, in that moment, there was a spaciousness that opened that was able to hold more compassion and also able to hold more of that excitable energy in a way that could be directed towards our desires. So there was so much reclamation of the gifts of both of those pieces in that moment through the body.
Oh, I love
which was
it.
so beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. And like, yeah, I want to share a little bit about my, I guess, felt sense experience as well of like, it was just so cool that that's how we ended up beginning, because just was like, as I went to press record the first time, I was like, I don't think I'm ready. I'm like, I'm not sure where's the leading into, like, where are we leading into this conversation? Where am I going? And there was like a bit of a scatteredness, and there was like, I'm not really sure right now. And so as I kind of held my finger over the record button, I was like, hang on a minute. And then Amberly intuitively started to guide us into this embodiment practice. And it was just a short one, but it was so profound. because instantly I could feel the lack of clarity and the scatteredness. And then I could start to feel, as I connected with girl, I could feel that kind of, there was anxiousness, but there was excitement as well. Like there was both, and there was a lot of like fluttering and like really conscious of the heart beating. And it was very shaky. Like there was like quite a bit of fogginess in the mind where I was like, I'm not sure yet. And as we started to connect to woman, there was like this kind of dropping, like it was quite instantaneous. And I know that's come with a lot of practice of like really practicing dropping into the body. But I could feel myself go into the womb and just felt this grounded, anchored, like I've got you. And there was this space holding happening for the part of me, like the girl that was in the chest and the head. And so it's not like that disappeared. It was still present. It didn't have to go anywhere. I was just able to hold it now because it was almost like there was, that container that could hold space for the girl, that she could feel safe to feel her excitableness, her anxiousness, her uncertainty, and she could be held in that. But then as I was in the woman, I was just like, oh, I know where I want to lead now. I feel confident. Like you were saying, I feel clarity. I can see the path. And so it's like, receiving the gifts of both, because even as I was connecting to like, oh, I feel how often I can lead from girl, of like that excitable energy, like, oh, I have this like excitable thing, or oh, look, there's a shiny object, like, oh, look at this, and I want to do that, and I want to share this, and that's awesome. And I have found actually that excitableness, that desire, and that inner child essence has actually led me to overcome a lot of things in my life and to put myself out there in a lot of ways and to share what I'm most passionate about. So that's amazing. And she's got so many gifts. And it also, I was like noticing how I see a lot of that in my son who's 3, that excitable energy and that zest for life. And we don't want to get rid of that. Like we want to embrace that. But what I notice is like where my girl is in fear, and when I'm leading from like her fear or her need to control, that doesn't always benefit me, especially in my relationship, in my sexuality, or when it comes to certain aspects of business. And actually, when I come into my woman, there is a lot more of like that groundedness, that awareness, that capacity to hold, that confidence to lead. And just like, when I connected to the woman, like even with, for example, like this conversation, it was like, oh, I know how I want to enter. I know where I want to lead this. I know how I want to support our community. Even when it was like feeling into the masterclass last month, I was like, actually, from my woman, I know it's going to be more beneficial to our community to share this in a month's time when I give myself more space to really feel into the depths. And I always notice when I'm launching something, like when I'm going to launch like this masterclass and I'm going to lead this masterclass, it's like I can feel that I go through this initiation journey myself. And if I were to rush that journey, there's going to be missing pieces and it's not going to be quite as potent. So it's knowing, like being able to feel into that aligned timing. And I do that by connecting to my woman, whereas my girl will be like, oh, I just want to do it now. I'm so excited. I want to share this. I'm going to jump into it now. And sometimes that can serve on some level, but it feels like it misses the potency and the depth a lot of the time when I rush into it.
Yeah, I can really feel that it's not about getting rid of or changing those aspects, but how can I ground them in and move from that place of this is actually true and authentic for me. I could do this 10 other different ways, but this is actually what feels true for me and is going to serve me the most and serve my community the most. Is what that feels like dropping into. And it's so fascinating the way that this conversation has sort of almost quite dramatically flipped. We were on a call just chatting about things for quite some time before we decided to record the podcast episode. And it's just such a fascinating, direct relationship with where a lot of what we will be teaching or guiding through that masterclass is around being in more connection with your felt direct experience and being more connected with and grounded in your senses, in the way that you sense yourself, your inner world, your outer world, and that being a really crucial part of reclaiming womanhood and your feminine nature, which is the feeling, the sensing, and being able to discern from that place. And I guess where I feel that maybe in our stages of growing up where this is stunted is when we're children and we're punished for feeling, and this is in both boys and girls, and just culture wide, is we're stunted in our emotional maturation, which impacts our womanhood, and we continue to live from a place of our childhood interactions that haven't been allowed to grow or flourish or mature. And part of that I felt as well, which was something that we were talking into, is where we as women and in our relationships, and not all women do this, but this was a particular thread that we were feeling into, is where we take too much responsibility, where we are too serious and we don't have access to our creative and our playful sides. And I had this sort of memory come up from when I was little and how I see other girls treated when I was growing up and now, is how young girls are very, very praised for acting older than they are, for being mature for their age, and how little girls are being forced to put on this posture of being really mature, because it's potentially not that they are, but that sends this message of, when I'm doing anything that is then childlike or in play or in excitability, then that's wrong. Now that I'm getting praised for being like an adult, if I act like a child, then there's no space for that. So it's really interesting kind of feeling some of those things that are weaving into why we end up acting from these spaces and staying stuck in these spaces within our nervous system and within our emotional bodies and field.
Yeah, and it's so funny you bring that up, because I'm like, oh yeah, like that is what I experienced growing up, like that, being praised like for being mature for my age and all of that. And even just like it's brought up even the memories of just how I witnessed my mom and my dad and that mirroring that happens. And it's something that I actually was exploring quite deeply inside my program that I'm running at the moment, Deeply Connected Couples. We talk about like how we mirror what we witnessed and what we experienced as children. And it's like witnessing, like I never really saw my mum in her play or in her like fun kind of like energy. Like she was tend to be very serious and responsible and taking care of the things and all of that, and that created a lot of seriousness in me. And so it's quite fascinating, because another thing that we were exploring just prior to this was that even when we're in a role that might be like responsible and it might seem like maturity, like, oh, I'm doing the adult things, but sometimes it can feel like we're almost like still a child playing house or playing adult, like we're not actually fully in our woman yet. And so there can be like almost a confusion of like, oh yeah, I'm a woman, or I'm in my adult, I'm responsible, I'm doing these things, but we don't realize that a lot of that's actually being led by the child, by the inner girl. And that's what I've noticed. The more of this work I've done for myself is how I'm still leading, or how I have still been leading from the child. So even though I might be running a business, I might be in a relationship, I might have children. There were still areas of life where I was showing up as the girl. And then when I became aware of this, I was able to integrate this part of me that was actually calling out for support, calling out to my woman, like for help. And then I'm able to integrate. So I do a lot of work around inner child. I talk about it a lot. It's something I'm really passionate about, is supporting these inner children to come home, to feel safe, to feel supported, to feel loved, to get those unmet needs met, and to actually come back to their true essence, where they get to be in their childlike innocence and fun and play and be excitable and like that reclamation of their gifts. But they don't have to lead the things that are actually designed to be led by the woman. And in that journey for myself, I've noticed massive transformation in my relationship when I'm not trying to control the relationship or control how things go, or like being really guarded has been a big thing for me, and not feeling safe to let love in, and like feeling like I've been protecting myself from that inner girl. And the more I've allowed my woman to come through, I've actually felt much safer. And I've also been able to let myself be vulnerable, to let love in, to connect more deeply with my partner, to actually connect with my sexuality, because sexuality did not feel safe at all for my girl. So then it would just get really shut down. Whereas when I started to really connect more deeply with my woman, it was like knowing, well, of course that's going to be the case. I was in my girl who didn't feel safe in her sexuality, and being in my woman actually helped not only the woman like embrace her sexuality and for me to embrace my sexuality, but for like helping the girl to create a healthy relationship with her sexuality. But she doesn't have to lead like where I'm at with my sexuality in my present day. So she doesn't have to be leading what sexuality looks like for me and my partner. She gets to go back to like, or gets to embrace her innocence around her own sexuality. And I get to really be in my woman when I'm connecting with my partner.
Yeah, I'm feeling that there's just so many different lenses and frameworks that we could look at this from. And yeah, there's a couple things that I just want to reiterate or rephrase in case they make sense to someone in particular in a different way. And it feels like this journey from coming from the girl into the woman is a journey of, instead of leading from the past, leading from the present. And the way that I know you and I both have the particular way that we work is not by leaving the past behind necessarily. So not leaving the little girl behind, not getting rid of her, not shaming her, not abandoning her, but in order to bring that past into the present, there's an integration process that happens there. But the leadership then becomes from the present moment. And that can only really be done as well if we are having a connected, but direct felt sense of where we are in our bodies, in our lives, in the present moment as well. So like I can feel, I guess, the different layers of where the embodiment practices are really crucial, where the somatic connection is really crucial, and then where also it's really important to use those pieces to integrate those lost and exiled or shamed or denied pieces in order to reclaim what you're speaking to, which is our erotic innocence. And you can take eros away from just sexuality because it doesn't live there. Eros lives in the aliveness of all of everything, but we're reclaiming where all of those things were really shut down in our childhood, and we've sort of managed to like get along through life half dead because we don't have any connection to that. So yeah, I can feel where all of those pieces are so strongly tying together, and I can feel when you're speaking to where they've created a lot of liberation in your body and in your relationships and in the way that you interact with your business and in the way that you interact with your partner and in the way that you interact with your now children.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just kind of exploding on the inside. Like there's just so many things coming through that I want to share. And I'm just like, oh, this is why we're going to be doing the 5-day experience, because there's so much to explore. And really the intention here today was to start to show you how it might look like when we're anchored or rooted in our girl or in our child form, like in the past, in like what maybe we're anchored in or leading from like a trauma that's unresolved, or there's something in the past that's kind of holding us in that child, in that inner child, and then we're leading and we're creating from that place, and it's often causing a lot of disharmony in our present, because we're coming from maybe that limiting belief or that trauma or that wound from our child, and so that girl is like leading and dictating your life, and often we're not even aware of it. And I noticed this in really all areas of my life, and there's been layers of initiation into this, of like really stepping into that womanhood, and it really does take like radical self-responsibility of like taking that responsibility for your life and for your choices and for your emotions, that really allows you to step into womanhood and really consciously, intentionally create the life and the relationships you want, which is what Becoming Masterclass is all about. But there can be a bit of fear around that, because it's like it does mean that we can't keep pointing the finger at like, you're to blame, you're the reason I'm like this, or you made me feel like this. And I talk a lot about triggers as well, and what I notice in triggers, to kind of give a bit of another example, is when we're triggered and we're consumed by that trigger and we go into reactivity, it tends to be when we're going into like girl form, or we're reacting from the child within, because we've now been completely consumed and we've gone into survival or trauma response, and we're acting from maybe a past hurt. So when we're triggered, it's not necessarily what's happening in the present, it's often what's happened in the past that's like kind of amplifying what's happened in the present. And so I always say, like, what is the trigger revealing to you? What is really going on a deeper level? And often there's an unmet need, or an unmet expectation, or a childhood wounding, or a limiting belief that's getting like agitated, and like that wound it's tender and it's being poked. And then when there's a trigger, and maybe we've done some work around this, we've done some integration, and we're moving through shifting our relationship to our triggers, it doesn't mean that the woman doesn't get triggered. She responds rather than reacts. So it's like, oh, I feel that. Ouch, that hurt. What am I feeling in my body? How do I want to respond to this? What kind of conversation is needed? Can I take some time? What do I need? Do I actually need to remove myself from this environment, process what's just happened, maybe do some breathing, take a bath, or can I actually open that conversation with my partner if maybe it was my partner that triggered me? The difference is that there's a response. I'm consciously choosing how to respond. I'm taking a moment, just like we did before the episode. Instead of just me kind of excitably or kind of impulsively pressing record, it was hang on a minute, let me tune in. Where do I want to lead here? That's the difference. Whereas in the past, especially when I was maybe feeling a lot more procrastination around episodes, it was let's just jump and see what comes through. And so that did have a part to play. That was a part of my journey. But now, with the work that I've done, there is a very different way that I move through my business, that I move through my relationship. And it's hang on a minute, let me tune in. Let me see how I want to respond to what's happening in my environment externally and internally. Because we've got our internal environment and our external. It's all right, let me just breathe and see how do I want to respond here. And that would be if we want to kind of what does it mean to be in the girl, to be in the woman?
I could feel this. I guess the sensation and this image of when you were speaking about this reaction to responding, I could feel the reaction being like when the triggers are coming up, which means you're in like a highly sensational state. There's almost this impulse to push away. And sometimes that means to, like, I guess, to connect it to the environment is to push whatever's happening back on to somebody else, or to, yeah, shove the emotions away or to like deflect. And then I could feel the difference between responding is there was actually a huge breath taken and there was an allowing in. I could feel, instead of pushing away, I'm allowing in and I'm increasing my capacity to be with this, to feel this. And then to move. I was like, wow, that just feels so different.
Yeah, and I feel like that can be scary, especially in the beginning of this journey when we first start out. It's like the thought of welcoming something that is so uncomfortable. It can be so confronting and so scary. And I want to share something that kind of came up in one of my client calls. It was interesting that when I was inviting her and I was guiding and supporting her to welcome and to allow and to feel it, she was like, but as I welcome it, it's kind of like it's shaking off, like it's disappearing. And she felt like this lightening was happening. I'm like, exactly, because you're welcoming. And so there's this like counterintuitive like feeling of like, but if I welcome it, if I embrace it, it's going to stay. It's like, actually, it's the opposite. Like, it actually moves through, just like energy, it flows, and we expand our capacity to be with more sensation. Because I love what you shared about triggers is like a highly sensational experience. And if we have numbed out for a long time, if we have shut down or deflected for a long time, that capacity gets shorter and shorter the less we allow ourselves to feel. So the more we allow ourselves to feel, just little by little, we expand that capacity, we can hold more. So when we're in triggering experiences, we're able to actually be in our center. And if that is really challenging, or if it's like, this is really intense, I don't feel like I can do that. It's like, okay, can we just leave the room? Can we just go and find like a space where we're alone to just be with the intensity? And to do whatever you need to do in that time. So even if it is that you distract yourself or you numb out or you shut it down, like, can we be in that reaction in a safe space? Can you find that safe container for you and just ride that wave as best that you can? And then as you come to the other side, you can start to reflect, okay, what triggered that? What came up? What do I need here? So you'll find that often you'll still, like when you're on this process, when it comes to triggers, you'll come out the other side of the trigger and you're like, oh, well, I still got triggered. I reacted in this way. But the more you reflect and ask yourself, okay, what can I do from here? What's my next step? What do I need to support myself? Reflect and get that awareness of what created this. You'll find that you're able to catch it sooner, is what I find. It's like, then all of a sudden you catch it maybe in the moment, and eventually you can kind of catch it before it even happens. You start to feel the lead up. Because it doesn't often just like all of a sudden you're triggered. Often there is like a bit of a lead up to it, and you can start to connect to that sooner. And it's almost like it slows down. That's what I notice with triggers for me now, is it feels like a slower process because of the work that I've done on this journey from girl to woman. So the integration work, the embodiment work that I've done. Being consistently in this space. So when we're like listening to different, like choosing what we listen to. So instead of me listening to, just for an example, instead of listening to the news, I'm listening to podcast episodes. And instead of like staying in conversation with people that actually feels really not in alignment for me, I choose who I spend my time with and what I'm receiving into my environment. So that's, again, like a process of how can I start to consciously choose from my woman of what is in alignment. So just kind of starting to put some pieces out there. Just for a moment. I'm going to hand over to you because I've got a baby coming in for a feed.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I particularly love that you've shared essentially a gateway into by being a willing and ready woman. It's not about coming into any sense of perfection around this process, any like part of becoming a really grounded, centered, connected woman is almost deleting perfection from your world. And it's all about, am I just willing to meet this in a new way than I have before? And am I willing to respond to this in a new way than I have before? And maybe it's not the way that I would desire to, but maybe it's a little bit different to last time. Maybe I'm a little bit more attuned to what I need in this moment. Maybe I'm a little bit more attuned to even being curious about finding out what I need in this process, which hasn't ever been available to me before. And am I also willing to be okay with wherever I am in that process and let go of any need to try and fix or change or correct or wrong myself? Because I feel like that's another really important element that is really interesting that I've found as I've been able to connect more and more to my sensation, more and more to, I guess, increasing the capacity or having a more intimate relationship with my own capacity, even like outside of working with it, just being in more contact with it, I can feel where, oh, it's actually a lot more obvious to me now where I guess some of the voices are coming from, if that makes sense. And we kind of spoke to this a little bit before this podcast call, Monique, where you said something that just hit my body so strongly, which was, oh, now I'm realizing where my inner critic is actually the strongest. Where actually it's not in relationship to a lot of outside things anymore, but I have this quite strong inner critic that's judging and shaming. And so there's a part of this process that's really, really essential in becoming and coming into relationship with where our internalized misogyny lives in a way, and there's a part where we'll be able to connect to some of that in relationship with womanhood, in relationship to sensuality, in relationship to being able to be in our full power. Part of the gift of this process is we actually get to see where there's some really strong self-imposed binds, and once we can kind of clearly see them and clearly come in contact with them, we're able to then breathe those in and not bring those into any shame or not bring those into any wrongness, but bring them home back into a state of wholeness, and again be able to make a radical self-responsible choice to take the pause that we need, that's required to meet whatever we need in that moment, to then move from a place that's grounded, respond from a place that's grounded. And yeah, like I'm experiencing the same as you were before. I'm like, oh, there's so many things I could feel into, go into, so many places of our lives that this actually touches and forms and has created shapes in our lives. But yeah, in the gift in that is that once we start unlocking this piece and we can kind of start working with unlocking this piece, that means that it begins to unlock and ripple into and open all of the doorways to all of those other pieces of our lives as well. So while sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much that's weaving into having an impact on me having not been able to mature into my womanhood in the past, actually by giving myself the things that I need to mature into my feminine. Whoa, the peace, it touches everything. It touches everything in my life. It touches my family dynamics. It touches my partnerships. It touches my sister connections. It touches the relationships I'm able to have with my wider community that I maybe I don't share value systems, but I'm able to respond to them in a way that is deeply connected to my value systems without needing to control or wrong their value systems. I'm able to connect differently to my romantic partner. I'm able to interact differently with my children. And my relationship to my sensuality, my sexuality. So like there's just such a rich opportunity as well on the flip side of when I start unlocking this piece, when I enter this doorway, when I'm open and willing, and maybe I don't have to feel ready, because I feel like there's a piece that you and I are quite passionate around, not glossing over how uncomfortable and intense some of these pieces are to feel. Because sometimes in the industry of self-love and the industry of like healing and transformation, that part can be skipped over in a way. And what do I want to connect to here? It's not honored as part of the magic, if that makes sense. It's almost made, if you're not feeling uncomfortable, then there's something wrong. But actually, we're welcoming that in as well as part of the alchemy, part of the magic, and part of what we're totally capable of feeling. It's just about learning how to have a different relationship to that uncomfortability.
Yeah. That so resonates so deeply. And it's even just like reflecting on my journey, like as we were talking about self-responsibility, I was like, oh, self-responsibility just doesn't feel sexy. And it's like, well, actually it's like, what does that make available to us when we actually take that radical self-responsibility and like go through that journey of like reclamation of personal power? Because what we realize is that actually there's a lot of benefit to not doing that, to not taking responsibility, to not taking our power back, to continuously pointing the finger or playing the blame game. It's like there's actually a lot of benefit in that, and I've noticed it for myself, and areas where I didn't want to, like unconsciously didn't want to take that responsibility and take my power. And then on that journey of girl to woman, for me, I've noticed like the more that I stepped into woman, the more I was able to like receive and achieve and accomplish and experience, and like my desires were like coming to manifest. And it's like noticing where like a big part of my girl, or like my wounded girl, was blocking or preventing me from creating the life that I really was saying that I wanted. But part of me really didn't want it because of the fear around it, the fear that was coming up, and the feeling of, I don't know if I'm safe to receive all of this or to do all of this. For example, like a lot of what I do now, like I wanted to build this business a really long time ago, but the fear around expressing, the fear around being seen, the fear like of being rejected or judged or whatever was too scary and it was too big. But the more that my woman stepped in, the more I was able to hold space for the fears. It's not that they necessarily just disappeared. I was just able to hold space for them, and they no longer stopped me from doing the thing, or they stopped me a lot less. And so step by step, I started to create the business that I run today. And it's quite interesting now, like when I'm working with women and they're like, but how did you do that? Or like, but you're doing all these things now. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't start there. I took it one step at a time, and it was like I did a little bit of this, and I worked within my capacity, And then I slowly started to stretch that capacity. So I stepped a little bit outside of it. I kind of like moved it and expanded that capacity, expanded my window of tolerance, my ability to feel the intense sensations that come with putting yourself out there. Same within relationship. We're putting ourselves out there. We're allowing ourselves to be seen in a vulnerable way. As women, we're actually allowing someone physically into our body, as well as like emotionally and energetically and mentally and spiritually allowing someone in. And that's a really vulnerable process. So the more that I stepped into my woman, the more I was able to allow my partner in, the more I was able to have like sexual experiences that were deeply healing, that brought like deep emotion that I hadn't allowed myself to feel, that allowed me to integrate. Like there were times where I would burst into laughter or like burst into tears, and I just really allowed myself to actually start exploring new levels of intimacy and sexuality and success and desire and all these beautiful things. The more I stepped into my woman, the more that was available to me, because when I was leading from my wounded girl, I really wasn't living. And it's like what you said earlier, like walking around half dead. I almost felt like completely dead. Like I was walking, I was breathing, but I didn't feel that aliveness, that magic and that like potent energy that like we are. Whereas today it's just like, holy crap, I can hold a lot of sensation in my body now. Like, oh my gosh, like look at the things that I dreamed of for so long that really felt impossible to me. Like if I couldn't say hello to someone, if I could barely have a conversation with my partner, how the heck was I going to create the business that I envisioned for myself? Like it just didn't make sense. How was that even going to be possible? But it was one step at a time, and it was through this journey of girl to woman and supporting the girl to integrate those wounds, to release those limiting beliefs, and to really start to feel, really just to feel, to feel all the things, the emotions, the sensations, and to be held by my woman was actually quite a journey of like, I've got you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, interesting. I'm like, oh, I can feel a million things I want to feel into. But yeah, there's just a real honoring in the foundational process, and part of I guess the cultural indoctrination is for like productivity, for rush, for instant results, for the magic pill, the magic fix. And what's actually I guess deeply entrenched in what the woman who's connected to her body knows is that building sustainable foundations takes time and is like such a crucial part of that process, and you have them forever. Like the time and the energy invested in actually slowing down, actually being with those parts, building really strong foundations, because part of what's really uncomfortable in some of this process is the crumbling that's often required in the restructuring and this rewiring process of limiting beliefs. There's things that often need to move in our life and be reshaped or let go of. So part of it's coming into the cyclical nature of women in that sense, and being with all of those stages in the cycles, and yeah, being with the rebuilding of the foundations once you've kind of pulled out some of those roots that weren't actually supportive or helpful, or in alignment with the value system of your authenticity.
Yeah, and just as you shared, like the word crumbling, just on like a sensational level, I could just feel like a grieving. I could feel like kind of spurts of like anger and rage and like just all these emotions that we haven't allowed ourselves to feel like coming through. And this is like another piece to this, and what we wanted to explore more inside the Becoming Masterclass is really the importance the essentialness and the power of community, because when you're in that crumbling, you don't want to go through that alone. Like, I definitely don't. I remember times where I felt really alone in my crumbling process, and how that actually felt damaging in a way, and like almost like there was trauma in that, of feeling so alone in that. And the more that I allowed myself to be in community and be held, like going to different masterclasses and being in like supportive containers, having mentoring, but also friendships, and like with people that could really hold me and be okay and like welcome all of me, and like in partnership. Like, I share a bit about my dating experience prior to Liam, and like how I was often with I like to kind of say more like boys rather than men. And I was also in my girl in that stage. Like, I also didn't know how to be in my woman in those relationships, and they also didn't know how to hold me in the journey that I was in. Whereas when I met Liam, he was able to hold me in that journey from girl to woman. But it was like that need for support, that need for people in my life to be able to hold me in that crumbling. And I didn't have that, a lot of that prior to meeting Liam. And that was also when I met Liam, was also kind of that point, like that where I was shifting, where I was like, I am ready, I am willing, which is what we're looking for, is people that are ready and willing. It was just prior to him meeting Liam that I felt that. I was like, I'm ready and willing to do the work now. I've been doing a lot of work up in the headspace. I haven't been embodying it, and it was time. So that was about just over 5 years ago that I had that shift. Like, I need to step into this, and it was scary, but I felt that readiness. And I feel like it's so important when you're in that process of crumbling and in that process of feeling the deep emotions to really be held. So yeah, if this is resonating, I recommend you come and join us for the Becoming Masterclass. We are going to go so much deeper with what we're exploring here. But yeah, I just felt really called to share that, of like, that crumbling is part of it, and we don't have to do it alone. We don't have to go it alone, because there is some scary parts of this when like the stuff is coming up, or like when we're triggered and it feels overwhelming and it feels all consuming. Being held in a supportive community in sacred sisterhood is so important. Yeah.
Beautiful, thank you. Yeah, I know. I desire to speak so much more, but I'm also feeling like there's a whole container for the moreness there is as well.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
I'm just wondering if there's anything else that you're feeling particularly, drawn to in this conversation, or...
I feel like there were more pieces, but I am also kind of feeling that somatic completion as well. I would love to share a little bit more about what we're going to explore inside the Becoming Masterclass, and then maybe we could do like a 5-minute practice of kind of similar to what we went through before the episode, of like, let's explore what it feels like on a felt sense level of like, what does it feel like when I'm in my girl, and what does it feel like when I'm in my woman. And if being in your woman is foreign to you, maybe even just kind of coming into your imagination with that, of like, what could it feel like to be in my woman, and just start to get curious about that. So to kind of begin, like, just with the masterclass, it's going to be 5 days. We're going to be starting on the 18th of June. It'll be from Tuesday to Friday. We'll have the weekend to just integrate and process. And then we're going to have a really beautiful, it's going to be like, it's a Q&A session where we can go a little bit deeper with anything else that's come up with you over the weekend, but there's going to be a bit more to it. We're going to go into some embodiment experiences. So it's going to be quite an amazing 5-day journey. It's really about like starting to open up that doorway. So for me, like when we were workshopping this, what came through for me is like giving you the key to the gateway to go through that journey, to really become the woman that you desire to be, because being woman is going to look and feel differently to me, to how it feels for Amberly, to how it feels for you. So it's actually exploring, how does it show up in your life when you're in your girl? What's possible when you really step into being woman and taking this radical self-responsibility and starting to shed some of those layers that may be keeping you stuck in your girl, so that you can really take that step into being woman. Because like when I was sharing about my voice and how it just felt like it was not possible for me to do, say, a social media live, or for me to do a podcast episode, like there was so much holding me back from running a workshop and doing all these things when I was really anchored in that wounded girl. And so it was like getting really curious about what was holding me back in that, and what did I need in order to shed that to move forward into my woman. So we're going to be going deeper with that. There's also going to be a call that Amberly and I run together, and I'm going to actually let you speak more to that one. I'm also going to be doing like one of the calls with Liam, where we actually explore how this shows up in our relationships and how to step into having more conscious, intentional relationships, conversations, and supporting each other when, say, I'm in my girl and he's in his boy, and maybe we're in our wounds or our trauma response, how we can actually step into our man and our woman and support each other through that. So as you can potentially see and feel, like I can feel it, it's going to be a really deep, potent container. There's a lot to explore, and it's really going to require a readiness and a willingness to step into this. It's not about getting it perfect. It's not about getting it right or getting really anywhere, but just a readiness and a willingness to go within and see what's going on and take that responsibility for creating your life, your relationships intentionally. So I just want to hand over to Amberly now, and if you want to share a bit about our day that we're going to do together.
Yeah, so I'm really excited for the workshop that we'll be running together. And I guess for this particular workshop, we really wanted to ground in sort of the importance of building that foundation of safety, and in particular to the female nervous system and physiology, and some of the pieces around where culturally there has been a lot of conditioning or restriction, or I guess the external societal influences that have disconnected us from what I'm feeling in this call is also a lot of the natural initiatory rites of passage experiences that we could have had growing up and growing into our womanhood, and have also, been an influence of disconnecting or divorcing us from our sensation, from the way that we would naturally move in the world, and forcing us into a posture or a holding that one keeps us in our immature child, and then also stops us from really stepping into our power and owning our voice. I'm really excited to touch into some of those elements, because there's sometimes it's really important to have a feel for the pieces that have woven into, I guess, the history and how we got here, but also how can we make a really powerful choice that now that we have that knowledge, we can integrate all of that into the present moment and make a choice now to build something different, truer, more aligned, more created, more connected to life, to move forward with and to create for our children, or for our friends and our sisters' children. And then, part of that will be going through some, somatic embodiment processes as well to anchor and land some of that into our bodies and our beings. But yeah, I'm really excited.
Yay. Oh yeah, I feel like it's such a different kind of excitement as well for me. Like it's like what I was sharing. Like my girl excitement is very like puppy dog excitement. Like oh shiny objects. Whereas this excitement, it feels very embodied and very deep, and like this has been like a long time coming kind of thing. There feels like a really strong build up, and like just so passionate about this topic and supporting more women to step into their woman. Because I also know so intimately how painful it has been to be stuck and controlled by my wounded girl. And also how painful it has been for her to feel so alone in that. Because as I've stepped more into my woman, I've felt her isolation and her loneliness and her fears, and that wasn't being held and supported. So as I stepped into my woman, I was able to hold space for her and have so much more compassion for her. And it's just completely shifted my relationship to myself. And like you were sharing earlier, how it like shifts everything, like how we relate in all these different ways. It's completely transformed how I show up and relate in my relationship with Liam, with my children. Like it's so profound and it touches everything. And I feel like the more of us that can really find like that courage or tap into that courage that's always inside of us and really take that self-responsibility, step into our power and really consciously create our lives and our relationships, have more compassion for ourselves and for those around us. It's this collective ripple. It's this massive shift that happens. So it's really cool the more that we do this for ourselves, and then also when we share it. So when I run these masterclasses, when I record these episodes, when I have beautiful people like Embody showing up and being in these spaces too, it amplifies everything. Like I've heard so much incredible feedback for when we've done podcast episodes together and when I've had other guests on the podcast, and how it's amplifying the energy and it's really touching people really deeply. So that's what I desire for this masterclass, is just to go to that depth of connection and supporting each other to rise together in sacred sisterhood. For myself, I've had so many such deep sisterhood wounds. So to be able to like co-create this space with you and with Liam, like I've had wounds on kind of both sides with like men and women, and so it feels like a really beautiful collaboration of coming together from such an integrated space, and then to share that with others, like what's possible, and let's do this together in sacred sisterhood, in community, to actually start shifting that we don't have to do this alone. It's just like I'm just feeling very like it's just a different excitement. Like it doesn't really feel like it has words. It's just, it feels like such an honor and such a privilege and so exciting to see where I've come and how powerful this work is, especially when I share it and I see how much it transforms my clients' lives, my students' lives, people that join the masterclasses and listen to the podcast, and I'm hearing all this feedback. It's really, really such an honor. So I'm excited for those who are feeling called to join us for 5 days at the end of June. It's only, what is that? 14, it's 2 weeks away. Start the countdown. All right, so we might just start to close this space now. So I'd love if Emily, if you're open to guiding a little bit of what we explored before our episode today, to kind of give people that taste of the felt sense of the girl and the woman. And it just starts to also give us that stepping stone of how can I consciously choose to step into my woman, or when I am in my girl, how can I really honor that, have compassion for that, and hold space for that.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm just inviting everyone to, if they feel safe in this moment, to close down your eyes. Start to shift your attention inwards, maybe taking some deeper, fuller breaths. Maybe allowing some sound on your exhale. And firstly, we're just going to come into or invite in a connection to how the energy of this little girl feels for you, or how being in a state of reaction feels for you. And maybe if it supports you to tune into a time where this has been really alive, maybe it's in your family dynamics or your relationship, maybe in the places where you can almost feel that voice of immaturity coming in, that I don't want to do that. It's your fault. I have to do all of the work. Why are you making me feel like this? Just allowing any natural gateway into this energy, into this part of you. Just noticing what you feel in your body. What sensations arise? Any areas of tightness or contraction? Any areas of excitement or maybe even joy? Noticing how your mind is in this process. Maybe there's some fogginess, a lack of focus or clarity. Maybe you're jumping from place to place. Maybe you're searching for an answer. Just noticing what comes up in this space of reaction. Just taking a deep inhale into whatever space of your body this feels most alive. And exhaling with a sigh. Oh no. I'm just going to invite you now to ground into where you feel your woman. And if you haven't made a connection with this part of you before, the woman who responds, the one who allows life in to move through her, then using your imagination to connect with where this might live in your body. Maybe inviting in a softening in the belly, in the jaw. Where does she live and take up space? Maybe taking some deeper breaths into your lower centers, allowing a sound on your exhale from this place. Just noticing if there's a different way that you experience the direction that your energy moves. For myself, I can feel that I feel more solid in my central column, that my spine feels more solid, my backbone feels more solid, just like a tree trunk, and I can feel the roots spreading down into the earth more deeply. And the vibrational quality of excitement moves from my chest, where it feels a little bit shallow and superficial, begins to drop down through my chest, down through my heart, into my belly, into my womb. And I can feel the fluttering sensations of excitement grow here. And just noticing what that brings up for you. You don't have to be feeling the same thing, but just notice what those words may invite. What they maybe open a doorway of possibility for. Of more sensation, more feeling in the lower chakras, an opening, a softening, a relaxing in the base. And what would it feel like to move forward in my life, to step forward, to walk forward in my life, grounded and rooted in this space. I'm just noticing the interplay between those two energies, noticing if this lower discernment can welcome in the fearful child, maybe wrapping your arms around your body, embracing yourself, embracing this part, embracing the fluttery, anxious energy. Letting this part know that you have a choice available, and maybe you're making that right now. To take a deep breath when the flutters are there. Anchor yourself into the woman and walk forward with clarity and confidence, embodied, empowered, leading yourself with discernment. Just taking a deep inhale into the body, scooping all of this up in the breath. Exhaling with a sigh, letting it all go. Taking another deep inhale. Feeling both of these parts move together, breathe together. Exhaling with a sigh, letting them melt and soften into one another. Last deep inhale here. As we close this practice, giving these two spaces whatever they need in this final breath. Exhaling with a full-bodied sigh. Maybe bringing some gentle touch to any part of your body that feels like it needs it right now. Practicing responding to your needs. Maybe you need a little stretch. Gently opening your eyes, maybe taking a glance around the room. Or responding if you feel like you need to stay here longer and maybe go off into your own space with these two energies. Just practicing this responding.
Thank you. That was beautiful.
You're so welcome.
I'm excited for the journey you'll be guiding in our workshop for Becoming Masterclass. That'll be really good. Emily's been weaving into more and more of my offerings, sharing her magic. It's been really, really beautiful. So thank you so much. Thank you to all our listeners as well. I'm really loving the feedback that's coming in, and I look forward to hearing the feedback from this episode, and also being able to see some of you in the live masterclass. Will actually be inside Zoom, where we get to really connect with you and guide you and support you on a deeper level. So that'll be really, really exciting. I will pop the link below for you to get registered and reserve your space. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Good Girl Unleashed podcast. If you are loving this content, go ahead and subscribe to be notified of upcoming episodes. Please leave a 5-star review to help me get these powerful teachings and practices to those who need it. If you would like to submit a question or would like to know more about how we can work together, send me an email to info@moniquecarmela.com. So much love to you, beautiful human. Until next time.